that.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. This is one of our webinars in the practitioner series, collecting client information remotely. And just a few housekeeping matters to get started. Please make sure that you're muted. We're going to be doing some interactive polls during the presentation, so this is going to be a little bit of an experiment, but you should see a poll pop up 2 different times during the webinar. And so if you could click on your answers there, that would be great. And then if you have any questions, there should be a questions button at the top right of your screen to ask questions. And then we will be monitoring those and responding. And we'll also have some dedicated Q&A time at the end. So a couple of housekeeping matters. And just going to check here to see, can everybody hear us all right? Does it seem like it's working? If anything's, if you're having any trouble, just send us a quick message. So by way of introduction, my name is Tucker Cottingham. I'm the founder and CEO of Lawyaw. Lawyaw is a legal process and document automation platform for small and medium-sized law firms. I'm an attorney, spent several years building and managing a small law firm myself before starting Lawyaw. And I've been a practicing attorney for several years and experienced a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about today myself. But I'm particularly excited to introduce you all to Justin White. My colleague here, Justin, recently joined us as lawyer in residence here at Lawyaw, which brings us to 3 attorneys on the team and a paralegal. So we're super excited. I'll let Justin give you his full background, but he's got a ton of experience working at small and big firms, and just very, very honored to have him on the team and here with us today.
Thank you, Tucker, and good afternoon, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us today. Like Tucker said, I recently joined Lawyaw as the lawyer in residence, and I'm thrilled about this role because it's going to allow me to really use my background in litigation to help our customers identify areas in their workflows that can be improved and efficiencies that can be built. So I just by way of background, I worked in small and large law firms and started my practice in the area of personal injury and then developed an employment and business litigation practice and observed very different levels of technology in the different firms I worked in. Some had systems in place that were very helpful. Others had a little to no use of available technologies, and others had technologies that were designed to be helpful and actually ended up causing more of a hassle and were a waste of time instead of a time saver. So I want to use these experiences to help our customers save time. I realize everybody's got busy schedules and juggling a lot of priorities. So if I do my job, I'm going to be able to save our customers time and allow them to focus on more engaging work or even personal time. So thanks for joining us, and feel free to let us know if you have any questions as we go forward.
Thank you, Justin. And we like to think that Justin is a man of the people with his various technology war stories at the different firms. So definitely excited to have your input here. And so the challenge that we're talking about today is really in the context of everything that's going on in the world, and specifically the fact that law firms are taking fewer in-person meetings. And so something that's been coming up a lot in our conversations with attorneys is that they want to find a better way to collect that client information remotely. And so after talking with a bunch of different firms and different attorneys, we kind of put together a framework to think about this problem and wanted to walk through that with you guys today and share with you some of what we've learned, some of the best practices, as well as some practical tools that exist that can help you. So hopefully this is a very practical, useful presentation. And a quick bit on the agenda here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this division between prospective client intake and then gathering client information from current clients. We're also going to talk a little bit about client stewardship, and that's kind of an interesting topic that I think personally is related to a lot of the sort of slow adoption of technology, and we'll get into the controversies there. Then we're going to get into some specific tools and strategies. And then one thing we're really excited to do, and you'll have to bear with us a little bit, is we're going to give you a sneak peek of an exciting new product release for Lawyaw. So this is not yet available, but we're going to peek behind the curtain and show you something that's going to come out really soon. So excited for that, especially excited for that part. So let's first talk about gathering client information generally. I always like to kind of go back to first principles here, and this quote I saw recently and resonated with me, which is that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And that's a quote from Albert Einstein, but I think it's really, really applicable to the law. And so we have so many people and so many firms that want to build their law firm of the future, that want to innovate, but they're using the same thinking that we've always used in sort of, may seem obvious, but to do something new, you need to think about it differently. So I like to get that out at the beginning. And then the way that we think about gathering client information is by dividing it into really two camps. So the first is prospective client intake. And so these are people that have not yet signed up and retained you. And it has to do more with screening clients, sort of doing conflict checks, and then actually drafting the fee agreement, right? So this is sort of new client intake. And then there's this other part of gathering information from clients, which is when you gather the information that's needed for specific analysis and for drafting and discovery. But basically, once you actually are retained by a client, and then you need to get that information to actually complete the drafting of the documents. So that's the division that we think about it in. I think that's how most firms think about it. And that's how we're going to kind of walk through it today in the presentation. Okay, so this is going to be our first poll. So you'll have to let me know if this works. But the question is, what is your primary method for collecting client information from prospective clients today? And so I am going to publish this poll. And if somebody could just maybe write in and let me know if you guys got that, that would be helpful. There's a little chat tab too. Okay, great. I see some answers coming in. Excellent. So appreciate that. This is our first use of the poll feature. And while the answers are coming in, some interesting statistics. So according to the 2018 ABA Tech Report, 93% of law firms do not use any kind of online intake. And in this context, it's just general intake. And more kind of concerning or important is that 71% of law firms don't have any type of formal intake process at all. So, whether that's, just any kind of standardized process. So if you feel like your intake process is a pain point, if it's kind of all over the place, if you haven't quite figured it out, apparently you're in good company with 71% of all other law firms in the country. So that's pretty interesting. And I'll keep you guys updated on some of the results that we're seeing. But right now, not surprisingly, looks like asking questions by email and taking notes during in-person meeting are by far the most common. So we'll keep you posted there. Okay, and that's in line with what we hear. So most common methods for prospective client intake, again, are going to be handwritten notes. This is what people have been doing. And usually those are going to be handwritten notes, in in-person meetings. In some cases, maybe over the phone. Now we're seeing video calls, but it's essentially the same thing. People writing on, yellow pads. The next most common one that we see is asking questions via email. So this is literally, sending an email with in the body of the email a bunch of questions, and the expectation is that the client opens up the email and then responds in the body with their answers. And then the third, kind of most common form of intake that we see for prospective clients is a fillable Word document or PDF. And this really doesn't come up even quite as much initially, but we do see firms that kind of lean into this idea of creating a lot of different Word documents and PDFs to gather client information. And I think, it's worth asking why we're doing things that way. We're obviously living in a world where you can, call an Uber in 5 minutes to anywhere in the world, and you can book plane tickets online, and you expect to be able to order food and make reservations. And as attorneys, I think, we're pretty demanding consumers ourselves. We like convenience. We don't like when things are really clunky and hard, but yet we overwhelmingly choose processes that kind of present that kind of friction for our clients and also for ourselves. And so I've been kind of curious about this issue and been talking to some different folks and different attorneys and clients. And the consensus really is that clients actually think that attorneys are purposefully choosing to be inefficient because they make more money that way. That's the widespread belief, at least from our research and talking to people. And I think that's not very controversial to say that. The idea being, obviously, lawyers bill for their time, so lawyers want to be really inefficient. And actually, one of the things when we were raising money for Lawyaw, I had multiple investors tell us essentially that lawyers would be happy scrubbing a bathroom with a toothbrush if you paid them $300 an hour. And I think it's just such a gross misunderstanding of the legal profession, but also not how we actually think about what we're doing. When we talk to lawyers, what they tell us is that they're meeting in person, they're talking to people on the phone, taking notes, because they're trying to build trust and rapport, and that has been sort of the professional model. And Justin, I know that you've worked in a lot of different firms. Certainly when I was training and starting my career, we absolutely met in person. We wore suits. We had a fancy office and conference room, and that was important. And I don't think it's all makeup. I mean, I don't think it's too much fluff. And I'm just curious, for your experience, you worked in AM 100 firms and small law firms, and what was your kind of training or impression of how to initially start to build that trust and rapport with prospective clients?
Sure. Well, I certainly think there's a type of client that is interested in sort of the beauty contest of and maybe they're screening a few different lawyers simultaneously, and you may be one of those candidates. So the suit, the conference room, the kind of the whole presentation of it is something that's appealing to certain clients. Others, it's really a personal thing. It's do they get in that room, in that initial meeting or over the phone, did they get a good feel for the attorney? They feel comfortable opening up to them? Are they able to talk well and feel like they're on the same page? I think that's really important, sort of a first impression type analysis. The other thought I had is, when early on in the stage, especially when they're screening the attorneys, or even after, and they've engaged the attorney and they're a new client, some clients are very sensitive to efficiencies because they're still building that relationship. And so if the attorney calls the client and spends a half hour going through a list of questions, and then has to come back a few days later and follow up with additional questions, the client may feel that's an inefficiency. And it goes back to that the previous slide about the lawyers trying to overbill the client. So I think while they're in that relationship building mode, there is a kind of a sensitivity to their time and the value of their time, and so it's important to be very efficient, especially with clients who are very busy and very aware of the amount of time they're spending, whether it's because they have constraints on their time or they're very sensitive to cost.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think it really is rooted in this notion of stewardship. And I guess one thing I want to say is I think it's, we have to remember that, people are trusting us with really important things, their kids, their most expensive transactions, the death of a family member, right? These are really important things, immigration status. And I think that trust in the attorney really can't be overstated. I mean, that's what it's about. We're advocates. And so I think at the early stage, when you're doing the initial client kind of intake or initial kind of client meetings, it is a very real thing to build that trust. And you do get a better sense of somebody, and if you want to work with them, by spending time talking with them. So I don't think that part is wrong. But I think that mentality, unfortunately, can result in poor results, poor outcomes. And it's really this balancing act, right? And it's balancing personal relationship building, and so that trust and credibility, and that really is paramount. And paying attention to the context, where the nature of the representation, maybe you need some complex analysis to figure out if it's gonna be a good fit. And you're interviewing the client too, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, when we're talking about gathering client information remotely, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't spend time getting to know a client, obviously, and make that time to develop that relationship. And at the same time, there are certain efficiencies and certain ways that we can improve the client experience. And I think pre-screening and then auto-generating the fee agreements are really the two things where technology can come into play and play a really meaningful role. And the pre-screening is I know it can be somewhat controversial, but it's really convenient for the client too. I mean, essentially, if it's not going to be a good fit for them, they don't want to be wasting their time and spending a lot of time with you. So I think it's this balance between sort of being able to streamline some of these processes while not sacrificing building a really meaningful relationship and getting a sense of who you're going to be working with. And so some of the modern tools for remote prospective client intake, really, again, focusing on that sort of lead screening and generating fee agreements. A lot of the lead screening tools that we've seen our customers use and other customers are receptionist services. And so things like Smith AI or Ruby, they have different offerings where they can help you to screen for different criteria, and they can pass that information to attorneys. And that seems to be pretty effective. There's also some interesting chatbots that are coming up where you can put them on your website, and you can kind of ask filtering questions and kind of do that intake and see if it's a good fit. Gideon is one that I think is still in beta. Maybe they just came out of beta, but seems really interesting. I know those guys. They seem like they've got a great pulse on what's going on. Lawyaw is another one. And then also just using online questionnaires. So things like Google Forms, Typeform, Jotform. Those are all kind of tools that we've seen that you can use remotely to help screen and evaluate prospective clients. And then there's the other side of sort of this new client intake, which is around generating the fee agreement. So getting the information and putting it into a fee agreement. And typically these fee agreements are fairly simple. You may have a couple different versions of them, but a lot of your practice management software is going to have an ability to populate a letter like that. So I know Clio Grow specifically is a product really oriented around sort of getting new clients and that new client intake process. Practice Panther. Then there's some sort of more CRM-ish marketing software that is pretty. I don't know if it's common, but more people seem to be using it and people seem to like it. Lawmatics is a good example of that. Infusionsoft, and those may be more expensive, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then there are some ways that you can use, document automation, a more robust document automation platform to get the information and generate fee agreements. And Hot Docs and I think Pythagoras certainly have the ability to take in some degree of information from a client. Lawyaw as well. We also have an e-sign. But I think it's always helpful to sort of put into context what information you need for what. And so thinking about the initial fee agreement, engagement agreement, it's worthwhile kind of separating, I think, into lead screening tools and then generating the fee agreement and how you balance that with an in-person meeting or at least a video call these days. And the types of firms that really benefit from this prospective client kind of technology, what we've seen are really growth-oriented firms. So Clio Grow, right? Lawmatics. These are firms that have a high enough volume of prospective clients that they really get a good return on investment for spending money on this type of stuff. And so I think that's the key that we've seen is a high volume of new prospective clients. And then often that correlates with firms that tend to have 10 to 29 people in them. So that's the kind of a demographic that the ABA uses, that slice, and that seems to have a higher traction rate with this types of software. And then there's some key practice areas that go along with that. Personal injury, you're getting a lot of calls about potential cases. Pre-screening that can be really effective. Immigration, collections, housing and evictions, estate planning. These are all sort of practices that can be higher volume. And so that's where we see and where we hear a lot of our customers and colleagues getting a lot of value out of implementing technology for that sort of prospective client process. And a lot of smaller firms, maybe that doesn't make as much sense for, but it's obviously, you all know your situation the best. The other part of it is gathering information from current clients. And so this is when you need additional information for more specific analysis and drafting. And this comes up a lot in estate planning, when you're drafting a will or a trust and you need a bunch of specific information about, who's going to be the executor and what's their address and, how many, different attorney and facts do you want and things like this. Or even if you're doing, in family law, specific information for divorce about your children and their information, or if you're doing a declaration of assets, there's a lot of specific information that needs to be passed from the client to the law firm. We also see this in litigation with case-specific facts, obviously immigration, business transactions, employment. And so, this is sort of the second component of gathering client information. And this seems to be the bigger pain point, at least right now, for a lot of customers and a lot of attorneys that we're talking with. So I think that division is really important. And so I want to just go ahead and take a minute to, the first poll worked, so I'm happy about that. And now we're going to do our second poll. So if you can, let's see. Okay, I think I just published it. So you should see that. The results are coming in, by the way, on the first poll. Asking questions by email and phone is the most popular, with taking notes during in-person meetings being the second most popular. But actually in this crew, a fair amount of online questionnaires, which is great to see. And so I'll keep you posted on these results as they come in.
We also had a couple comment about a form, getting the information from a form on the website.
What do you mean by that?
A comment from one in the audience about primarily a form from the website.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's great. That's kind of like the in the pre-screening tool where you can gather that information in an intake form on your website. And I think that Gideon is a chat bot that kind of does that. That's where we see some intersection there. So I think that can be really effective. And then, okay, great. And so then I'm just gonna move forward. We're getting some questions here, and I'll answer them as we go. I did get one question here: the difference between Clio, Grow, and Lawyaw. I'll get into that. We could maybe do that a little bit towards the end when we talk more about Lawyaw. But in a nutshell, Lawyaw is a sophisticated document automation program. It's really easy to use, but it allows you to do things like if you have multiple children versus one child, you can change subject-verb agreement. You can add in sections of a document. It integrates with Clio. Clio is one of our best partners. We love Clio. Clio Grow, I think, is more oriented towards the marketing aspect of growing your firm and getting new clients. And so we're more focused on sort of reducing retyping information across platforms, being able to generate multiple documents at once, and being able to have some truly rule-based templates that are really easy to create, and then share those with the organization. So we can talk about that a little bit more later, though. Thank you for the question. Okay. So moving on, I'll keep you posted on the poll results. So at this stage, I think when we're talking about this, gathering information from existing clients, that seems to be the thing that's coming up now. And I think it's useful to go back to where we are in the client relationship. With the new client, you're still building that rapport, you're building trust, you're trying to sort of win the right to represent them. And once they've signed up, that personal relationship remains really critical. But you have established a relationship and you have earned their trust. What you haven't done is necessarily completed the work. And so the focus really is on, work quality and client experience, because now they've hired you. And I always think it's useful to think about the context of where we are in that client relationship when thinking about different solutions and how to tailor them to the needs. And so the balance becomes a little bit different. It becomes the balance between work quality, so being able to do an effective legal analysis, making time to do that properly, following the correct procedure, so making sure you have some guidelines in place where you're not missing steps or accidentally assistant doesn't do something that they're supposed to do, and it's about just not having errors. And so we talk a lot about unforced errors. That's something that's in all of our control, and putting guardrails in place to sort of reduce unforced errors really pumps up the work quality and the consistency there. And then on the client side, the client experience, what clients are concerned about is obviously cost, convenience, and we talked about at the beginning with sort of evolving client demands and what clients want out of their their attorneys and their attorney experiences. Responsiveness, always a huge thing. And they care a lot about what the work product looks like, right? They don't want, if it looks weird, even if they don't understand it, if something looks strange, then they're not going to be as receptive. And turnaround time, they want to understand what's going on, right? So these are having time to talk with you, or to be able to understand where they are in the process and what might happen, and then obviously the outcome. And so it's a little bit of a different set of parameters that we're balancing. Once the client's retained us and we're thinking about our priorities. And some common methods for gathering current client information. That's where we see the fillable Word and PDF documents at the top of the list. For firms that are not solos, that have assistants and paralegals, we see a lot of delegation to paralegals and assistants, asking them to reach out. And usually that's going to be, some notes from a paralegal or a assistant that they're taking while they're, either having a phone call, or maybe, they've sent a few emails back and forth, and they can kind of relay that information. And then previously in-person meetings, again, kind of depends on practice area. Family law, we see a lot more, we were seeing a lot more in-person meetings. And then here's an example of just sort of what we see a ton of. So, just a client information sheet, and this is just a Word document. And the idea is that the client just downloads it and types in there. Obviously, you get kind of weird things happen when the lines move, and the next field goes onto the bottom line, and it's not a super great experience, but it's pretty common. Justin, in your firms that you worked in, how did you guys deal with what was your process for getting the information after somebody had retained the firm?
So, it would vary on the client. Some clients are very responsive, easy to get a hold of, willing to give you the time to answer questions. Others want a more consolidated approach. They would like a form. They would like a email with a list of questions to kind of go through at one time, and may not be very receptive to follow-up questions. So I think it really depended on the client a lot and their preferences. But generally, a lot of in-person meetings, a lot of phone calls, and emails. And when those emails were consolidated, usually that was appreciated by the client as opposed to a extended back and forth. But sometimes, with the fact gathering process, it's sort of a drip of new information, which raises additional questions, and so there's that open dialogue. But it really depended on the needs of the matter, and also the preferences of the client. Yeah.
And being on the other side of it now, where we have our lawyers that we pay and work with, it's interesting because to do that, to have some of those phone calls means I'm taking time out of my day. It's interrupting my work day. Maybe I'm going to the car and making a phone call to the lawyer and talking to them. And I'm thinking to myself, why couldn't I just send this to you at 11 at night when I am, on my couch? I just want to fill something out. But again, I think it's rooted in a lot of really reasonable, well-intentioned efforts, but the current environment is putting a lot of pressure on some of those ideas. And so, when thinking about, okay, given today's environment, given, the sort of the version of the law firm that a lot of us are imagining and working towards, what are some of the key features to look for collecting some of the current client information remotely? And, this is stuff that may be obvious, but there's some nuance in here. So one of them is obviously that if it's online, that's going to be really convenient for everybody. And so if you can send a link or embed it on a website, somebody wrote in and mentioned they do. Having it be mobile friendly, so testing for mobile, a huge amount of interaction is on mobile now, so a client's going to look at that on their phone probably. Being able to save the work and come back, so that's a big thing, is being able to, for a client to be able to start filling something out, leave it and then come back. Having a step where the attorney can review it too, so having an easy way for the attorney to review it. I've heard people say that there's some frustration when they try to print out a questionnaire, which maybe wouldn't be best practice anyways, but however you're going to want to review that information, whether it's printing it out or just being able to log in and review it before it goes somewhere else, is a pretty useful step. And then, this idea of having things talk to each other. So integrations with your other software, not having to retype things. Obviously you want it to be cost effective. And then I think one of the biggest features, and I'm obviously biased, but one of the biggest features is that the information that you collect can just go directly into your documents. And so that's where you see some breakdown with some of the existing options where maybe if it's just a straight mail merge, a find and replace, that works. But as soon as you have, one kid versus two kids, you've got a lot of things changing in the document. Or as soon as you have, an additional factor that requires different language, or maybe an additional document, that you have a pretty low ceiling with a lot of the current options. And really, once you've collected this information, the client's given it to you, we just want that to go into the right place. And so that's one of the things that technology should be able to accommodate. We'll get into our sneak peek in a bit, but these are some of the things that we've seen people really value in some of the solutions that they've found. And so some of the specific options for gathering current client information, there's not nearly as many as sort of, new client information. And so what we see a lot of is Google Forms, embedding something on your website kind of counts as well. But once they've signed up, you're going to need tailored information for their case. And so that's where those systems kind of break down a little bit. Jot form, type form, all of these are really kind of generic online survey type software where you can get the information, send them a link. Some of the problems are that they're not legal specific. And so some of the things that might be very useful for a law firm, in terms of how that's going to play with other software, what you're going to do with that information, might not be contemplated in some of the generic kind of online form options. They're really not very easy to integrate with other software. If you're a developer, maybe so, but it's not kind of out of the box type of thing. And then, these don't directly populate your documents, and most people are still using Microsoft Word. And so, that's a pain point as well. And that's also a great transition. I know we're at 1:38 here. But our number one most requested feature is obviously the client questionnaire, and having an integrated client questionnaire. And so what I wanted to do today was give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek about, of the new product that we're working on. And so I'm going to share my screen. This is not released yet. So hopefully you'll bear with us a little bit here. And let me just see, get one thing set up. And Justin, I don't know if you have any final thoughts while I'm just setting this up really quick, but maybe about sort of the way that, I guess one question for you would be, in your firm when you were gathering that information, sort of manually, and now having seen, the available technology, do you think that that's widely applicable for a lot of the types of cases that you're seeing, or a lot of types of legal projects?
Absolutely. I think anytime you could consolidate that process to make it, as less burdensome on the client as possible, I think that's much appreciated from a client perspective, because, they don't, most clients don't want that back and forth dialogue if they feel like you're not collecting information in the most efficient manner. And so that's one side of it. I think the other side is then, efficiently using that information, storing it, and being able to plug it into your documents and other work product, because there's some real inefficiencies there. Once the information is gathered, Where is it? Who can access it? Is it organized in a way that can be used for the demand letter, or used for discovery, or used for filing? And so the more efficiencies you can build into that process, it goes right back to meeting those client expectations, because every new client wants they want their work product to be, they want their matter to be at the top of the list, and they want that document to be filed right away, or they want that letter to get out the door. And so the more cohesive that information gathering process is, the quicker the work product gets out. So I think that's a huge room for building some efficiencies in the whole process.
Awesome. Great. So I'm sharing my screen now. So this is Lawyaw. For those of you that don't know much about Lawyaw, again, we're legal process document automation platform. We're built by attorneys. We have thousands of law firms across the U.S. and Canada that use our software. We integrate with Clio. It's all cloud-based, and we use your own documents. So you take the existing documents that you have. We have a really easy way to turn them into rule-based templates where you can create different triggers and populate information. And if anybody wants to learn more about Lawyaw, you can search Lawyaw or go to our site. But what I want to show you right now is the new product that we're working on, which is this questionnaire feature. And so this touches on a lot of what we've heard. A lot of the information that we just shared informed our building of this product. It's not out yet, but do want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek here. And so what you can do with Lawyaw is you can create different questionnaires. So you simply go to a questionnaire. You can write your questions. You can see the preview over here. So while you're designing your questionnaire and just adding your different questions, and you can move them around and order them, then you get to see also what it looks like from the client's view. You map these fields. So these fields flow directly into your document, which I'll show you in a minute. And then when you want to publish it, you can copy this link. You can choose a matter. So if you have an existing matter, you can say, okay, this is an intake form for this particular matter. Copy it to clipboard. Now you can just send that to your client. You can put that link somewhere. So really, really pretty interesting. And so now what you do is once you create the questionnaire, then you copy the link, you send it to your client. We're going to pretend that I sent this to Justin and he filled it out and submitted it. And so now when he's submitted it, I can go to the matter. In this case, if you didn't map it to a matter, it'll create a matter for you. And then I've got my intake form here that he submitted. I can see all the information. I can go ahead and edit this. So I can jump back in and maybe talk to him about some of his answers, make some adjustments if I need to. And then I can go and take my form set. So in this case, we're going to do a will and a power of attorney. And I can go and edit it. And all this information comes in directly. So the client information, the principal, the information that can be passed to us is all going to auto-populate. And then I get to choose some of the things that as an attorney I want to choose. And so, I can choose some of the substantive provisions, like we can talk about attorney-in-fact compensation, some of the different powers. You can toggle these, on and off. So this is just your own language that you've put in. So we kind of do the part that needs the legal expertise, but we're taking all that information from the client and just having it go directly into the document. Talk about specific powers. I can include or omit different powers. And then the way that this works in Lawyaw is that you kind of go through, you fill out this information, we call this journey, and then you generate the documents. You can generate multiple documents at once. These are editable, so you can edit and massage language right here in the window, so you can kind of have these saved clauses. But the main thing is that it's helping to divide basically the information that you're just getting from the client and putting into documents and maybe building triggers off of from the substantive legal decisions. And then in Lawyaw, the way it works is once you draft, once you generate it, everything that's changed in the document is highlighted. And so it's really easy to review if you've got an assistant or somebody you're doing the first version of this. As a reviewing attorney, you can jump in and see it. And then this just downloads as a regular Microsoft Word document and integrates with different things. But super excited to show you that kind of end-to-end flow where we can send out the intake form or that questionnaire. All that information can pull directly into your document sets. These are your own templates. And so this is really, really working towards what we're really excited about, which is this end-to-end flow. We've got the built-in e-signature as well. So this, keep an eye out. We'll keep everybody posted about when this becomes officially available. We just wanted to give you a quick sneak peek at some of the things we're working on to try to make your all's lives easier, especially during this time when we're doing less in-person meetings and when, you know, there's kind of a gap in the process as there is right now. So hopefully that's exciting to you guys. We're super excited about it. I'll pause and take some questions now. See some stuff coming through. But yeah, thank you for bearing with us and attending, and we'll jump into some questions. Okay, so we have several questions about integrations. So we integrate with Clio, and we have an API that we've got an integration in Zapier. It's a little bit clunky right now because it requires some pretty tedious mapping. So Zapier is not a super great fit, and it costs people money sometimes. So we'll be announcing some additional integrations very soon. But we have essentially, you know, an API that we can integrate with any data source. And so, yeah, if there's specific things, we'll do one-off kind of things, but we'll be having a really extensible API out soon. And that will allow you, yes, to send information as well as receive information. Somebody asked about, are we automatically on the mailing list to hear about this release when it's released by signing up at this webinar? We'll reach out. You should be. Hopefully we'll keep track and include you on any mailing list. But we'll definitely be in touch when it comes out. And also would love, you know, input if you guys are excited about things. Let me see here. Good question. Something about embedding videos and descriptive content throughout the questionnaire. So this is something that we've heard a lot about. The first version right now does not allow you to embed a video, but you can absolutely embed descriptions, you know, context. You can have, you know, a lot more flexibility about how you want to explain things to your client and what information you're looking for. We've got some media features, but the video is one that I'm really glad you brought up, and we'll get into that soon. This is another question about sort of Clio Grow. So there is some overlap in Clio Grow. Clio Grow does allow you to, you know, create questions and send them out to your clients. I think what we've heard, and again, we love the Clio guys. We've, you know, great partners. A lot of our customers use Clio. We do a lot of co-marketing partnerships with them and stuff. But what we've heard is on the Clio Grow side that there's kind of a division between Clio Grow and Clio Manage. And so I think that getting that information into the place where it can be most useful, when you're getting beyond sort of the initial fee agreement or sort of some of the, you know, collection of information for leads, I think there's a lot of friction there and it's not super intuitive. So we really spent a lot of time with people who are looking for that solution and trying to design something that's super easy to use, really intuitive. As I said, we've got Justin, who we like to think of as a man of the people from his various technology scars of practicing for 10 years, and he thinks it's pretty easy to use, I think. So we've passed a lot of tests so far, but I'd love to show it to you and get your all's input. But you know, our primary kind of goal was, you know, this needs to be really practical, really easy to use, it needs to save you time. And so and then having that information just really seamlessly flow into your different template sets has been our goal. So you guys will be the judge of how well it lands, but we're getting great feedback so far with early adopters and super excited about it. Okay, we got a couple more things coming through here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, just so that we can got just one last slide. Okay, want to ask us anything? I'm just going to put up the last slide while I'm still taking some questions here. we have lots of integration, lots of questions coming through. I know we're at time, so I want to just, you guys will get a recording of this. So if there are people that need to go, feel free to go. Also, feel free to reach out to me directly or Justin, and I'm happy to kind of go into more detail. I can do a little bit more of a deep dive. I wanted to make sure that this was a presentation that was not just focused on Lawyaw and that was actually giving him useful information. And so I didn't spend as long on our specific product. I want to just kind of give you a little bit of a peek at what we're working on. But it seems like a lot of people here are asking specific questions about Lawyaw. And so, more than happy to talk with you guys directly, set up another time. I'll answer a few more here, but thank you everybody for attending. It's been awesome. I know we're over time, so I'll keep talking, but feel free to drop off if you need to. You shared box folder with clients. So people are asking about how to share things with clients, and the way that our software works for the questionnaire is you can just send them that link, or you can put that link somewhere, and then they access it, and then they have their own unique way of authenticating so that they can come back to that form, they can leave it, come back the next day, and they're going to have it's not a password, but they have a secure way to sort of revisit that information. We don't, somebody's asking about like sort of a shared folder, Dropbox. I think I would need more information to know what you're trying to do with that, if you're trying to share documents with them or if you're trying to share the intake form. But the intake form is, they're going to submit it, and then you can still go in and review it with them and edit things before pushing that information into your practice management software or your documents. Getting some love for Art Vandelay.
Saw that.
Gotta enjoy it where we can. Yeah, and then I don't think I'm gonna have time to actually be able to go through all these different questions right now. So this is what we're gonna do. We'll send some emails. We'll follow up with you all. Would love to get feedback. Would love to hear what you're looking for. Our team is solely focused on trying to build practical, useful technology to make your all's lives better. And so very open to any feedback, questions you have. We're here to be a resource. And now, Justin, you're going to send your calendar to everybody and they can just book time with you for free. And then you'll be consulting them on legal processes.
Absolutely. Please reach out.
That'd be great. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.